So welcome back. So what I will be needing for this tutorial, I will be needing my chalk, my ruling tape, my measuring um my ruler, then I will be needing a pair of scissors as well. So the next thing I'm going to do right now, or the first thing I'm going to do right here, now the first thing I'm going to do is to locate the biggest part of my measurement. Now, in this tutorial, I will be making use of the waist line, the waist circumference, the hip circumference, the knee circumference, and the down part, the full length. So right now, I'm going to take the biggest part, which is the hip um, line, the hip and circumference. So my hip, I'm going to divide it by 4. Supposing for this particular tutorial, the hip for this skirt is 36 inches. So I will be dividing 36 inches by 4, which gives me 9 inches. So that 9 inches, I will be adding like 3 to 4 inches extra. So that is what I've done already. And remember, this fabric, this is the wrong side and here is the right side. But I will be working with the wrong side. That's why I've folded it to the wrong side. And this fabric is on fold. So this is the front. I will be cutting the front part or the front panel of this skirt. So the next thing I'm going to do right now is to place my ruling tape on the edge here. So I have subtracted 1.5 inch because this is going to serve as my band. So the next thing is to indicate my reference line. Now already this is the waistline. So from the waist, I'm going to come down by 7.5 inches right from here, 7.5 inches. So I'm going to draw the line. Then from this point, this is my hip line. Then after that, I move to the knee line. So the length of this skirt is 37 inches. So 37 inches, I'm going to divide 37 inches by 2. So the half length is going to be served as the new line, the new length for this skirt. So 37 divided by 2, I will be having less than 19 inches. So I will be marking my new line here. Let me just mark 19. So then I come down to the 37 inches, which is the down part, the full length of this skirt. Then plus my hemming allowance. So I will be making my hemming allowance 1.5 inches. So I'm going to add it, which gives me the total of 38.5 inches here. So the next thing for me is just to connect these lines straight. So welcome back. Now, what I will be needing for this tutorial are my chalk, my pair of scissors, my ruling tape, and my ruler. So the first thing I'm going to do right now is to determine the biggest part of my measurement. So the 1/4 of, and the biggest part of this measurement is the hip circumference. So 1/4 of the hip circumference is what I've used to cut out this fabric. Now, the hip measurement for this tutorial is 36 inches, and 36 inches divided by 4 gives me 9 inches. So that 9 inches, I'm going to add about between 3 to 4 inches. So, and that is what I have already here. So right now I'm going to start. Now this fabric is on fold. you can see, sorry, is on fold. This is the right side and this is the wrong side. So I will be working with the wrong side. Now, the length for this skirt is 37 inches. So 37 inches plus 1.5 inches for my hemming allowance gives me 38.5 inches. So, but because this skirt is going to have a band, so and the width of the band, I will be using 1.5 inch. So from that 38.5 inches, I'm going to subtract the width of the band, which is 1.5. So that gives me 38.5 minus 1.5. So I'll be having 37 inches for the length, the full length. So right now, to I'm going to input my reference line. Already you can see I've placed my rule. This is the way I place my rule, which means this extra 1.5 is going to serve as my waistband. So that is how that is why I've placed it like so for better clarification. So from this point, I'm going to measure downward to determine my hip line. Already this is 1/4 of the hip line. So I'm going to come down by 7.5 inches right from this point, not this, from here, 7.5 inches. So I have my 7.5 inches here. So I'm going to extend this line to the other side to give me a straight line. 1.5, I've left that. So I'm going to connect. I'm going to make another 7.5 inches for the line. So I'm going to connect this line. So I place it again. The new line, 37 divided by 2 gives me less than 19 inches. So I will be having 18¾ inches. So I'm going to, here is my 18¾ inches. So I extend it to this side, 18¾ inches. That is for the new line. So I come back to the down part, which is 37 inches. So you remember 37 minus 1.5 inches, I will be having 35.5 inches. Then the hemming allowance 1.5 inch. Let me bring it closer. So plus the hemming allowance 1.5 inches, which gives me the total of 37 inches. So right now I'm going to connect these lines together, after which I proceed. So as you can see, I've connected my reference lines together. So the next thing I'm going to do is to impute my measurement proper. Now the waist, the 1/4 or quarter of the waist of this skirt is 28 inches. So sorry, the waist circumference is 28 inches. So quarter of it, that is 28 divided by 4, will be giving me 7 inches. So I'm going to mark my 7 inches here. Then I'm going to include 1 inch for my dart allowance. Here is the 1 inch for my dart allowance. Then the seam allowance, I will be making it. You see that it shouldn't be, I will advise it shouldn't be too much. I will be making my 1 inch. You can make yours 1.5 inch, but I will be making my just 1 inch, between 1 inch or 1.5. So I make it 1 inch. So I go to the new, the waist, the hip line. The hip, the 1/4 or the quarter of an hip of the hip of this skirt is 9 inches. So I have my 9 inches right here, as you can see. So I mark it here. Then I'm going to add my seam allowance, 1 inch. So I go to the nail line. Now the quarter of the hip, I'm going to quarter of my hip, coming to the new line, quarter of my hip, I'm going to subtract just 1 inch from it. Remember the quarter of my hip here is 9 inches. So coming to the new line, I'm going to make it 8 inches. That is 9 minus 1. So I have my 8 inches right here. Then my seam allowance 1 inch. Then the down part, that is the full length, whatever I have here on the new line here, I have it 8 inches. So for the down part, I'm going to subtract just 0.5 from that 8, which gives me 7.5 inches. So in order to make it a very pencil skirt. But if you wish that it shouldn't be too pencil, you can leave it. You have whatever I have on the nail line is what I will transfer exactly without subtracting. But because I want it pencil, real pencil, so I subtract 0.5 from what I have on my nail line. So that gives me 7.5 inches. Then plus 1 inch allowance. So the allowance which I'm including must be in uniform. If I started my allowance, seam allowance as 1 inch, it must be 1 inch downward. So please take note of this. So right now, whatever I have at the base is what I shall be transporting, or I shall be transferring to the hemming line. Now, the down part here, I have 7.5. I'm going to extend it to the hemming line, 7.5, so that there won't be any contracts at the base. Then 1 inch for my seam allowance. That's exactly what I'm going to transfer to the hem allowance, the hem line or hemming line. So the next thing I'm going to do right now is just to connect these lines together. So this is the original line. I connect it together, after which the seam allowance line, I connect it together. So I will be having 2 lines here at this side. So I'm going to place my ruler, starting with this line, I connect, then nail to hip to nail line, I also connect, then nail to the down part, I will also connect, then to the hemming allowance, then or to the hemming part. Then I come to the allowance, I also connect, sorry, I ought to have connected here to this. So I'm going to come back. So as you can see, I've connected my reference line together down to the down part, to the hemming line. So the next thing I'm going to do right now is to impute my measurement proper. So right now, the waist quarter of the waist circumference. For this one, I have the waist circumference to be 28 inches. So quarter of it gives me 7 inches. So I'm going to mark 7 inches right here. So I'm going to include 1 inch as my data allowance. 1 inch. Then the seam allowance. It actually depends on you, but the seam should not be too much, but it shouldn't be more than 2 inches. But I will be making my 1.5 inches. That is for the seam allowance. So I come to the hip line. Now 36 divided by 4, I'm going to mark 9 inches. I have my 9 inches right here as quarter of my hip. So I'm going to add 1.5 inches as my seam allowance. Now, for the sake of our beginners, the seam allowance should always be in uniform. It shouldn't be in contrast. If you are like this one, I make 1.5 inches as my seam allowance. It should be 1.5 inches downward as the seam allowance. So right now, I go to the nail line. Now, the 1/4 of my hip line is 9 inches. Now, I'm going to subtract 1 inch, just 1 inch from that 9 inches, which gives me 8 inches. So that's what I shall be marking on my nail line. 8 inches instead of 9. Now, to give me the shape. So, I'm going to add 1.5 inches as my seam allowance also. Then, I come to the base. That is the length, the full length, the down part of the skirt. So I have here the quarter of this place, which is the nail line. I have it 8 inches. To make it pencil, to make it very pencil, I'm going to subtract 0.5 from this 8 inches which I have on my nail line here and bring it down to the down part of the skirt. So 8 minus 0.5, I have 7.5 inches. So if you want yours to be straight, not too pencil, you can leave it like that. That is what I have, like 8 inches I have here. I'll just transfer it directly to it. But I want it to be pencil, very pencil. So that's why I've deducted 0.5 from the nail line. So that is 7.5. Then I'm going to add my seam allowance, 1.5 inches. Now, what I have at the base, the down part of the skirt, I'm going to transfer exactly to the hemming line. I have 7.5 here, so I'm going to also transfer the 7.5 inches right here on the hemming line, then 1.5 inches for the seam allowance. So I have it here. And you see, so right now, the next thing I'm going to do right now is to connect these lines together. I'll start by connecting the original line from the waist. I connect this to this, then this to this, then this like this. I just trace the lines. So right now, I start from here, this one. You can see I have 2 marks. So I will start from the inner one. I'm going to connect that of the waist to that of the hip line together. Then from the hip line to the nail line. So I also connect. Then from the nail line to the base of the skirt, you connect. To the base of the skirt down to the hemming line. Then I also go back to the second line, which is the seam allowance line. So I connect that of the hip to the waist. Then I come from the hip line to the nail line. I also connect. Then from the nail line to the base, down to the hemming line. So I'm done with connecting the lines together. Can you see? So the next thing I'm going to do right now is just to cut this extra off. So, and I'm going to start from the base. So this is the front panel or the front piece of her skirt. So the next thing right now is just to take this same front piece and place it on another fabric which I'm going to cut. Or now I place it, now leaving 2 inches. I'm going to extend this line by 2 inches, which is going to be for my zipper and for my slits for this skirt, for the back piece. Now, as you can see, I've used the front panel to cut out the back piece. Here is the back piece. You can see I've extended, I've left 2 inches for the back piece. And these 2 inches, like I said the other time, is serving as the zipper allowance and also for the slit. You can see. So the next thing I'm going to do right now is to place my is to go to cutting the facing for this skirt. I will use the front one, the front panel of this skirt. Then I'm going to fold my facing just exactly like this and place it on the front panel of this skirt and use it to cut it out. But I'm going to consider by the time I'm going to measure from this waistline to the nail line. Then plus I'm going to add extra 1 inch for my hemming allowance at the base of the facing. So that's the next thing I'm going to do right now, after which I place it on this and I seal. Now, as you can see right here, I've used the fabric to cut out my facing. This is the front panel of the skirt. What I simply did was to place it just like this and use it to trace the line and cut it off. So now here is the back piece of the skirt. Exactly what I did to the front is what I also did here. I placed it just exactly like this. Now coming to the base, I added 1 inch to the base for my hemming allowance of this facing. So for the back right now, I'm going to cut this, slash this into 2 equal parts, both the fabric. So as you can see, having completed sewing the hemming, the bottom or the hemming of the facing, as you can see, I place it right on the wrong side of my fabric, that is wrong side of the facing to the wrong side of the fabric. Then I sew it round, tracing the line to the waist line, then to the other side. So right now, that's exactly what I also did to the back piece. So here is the back piece. Can you see? But in the case of the back piece,